Okay, so now we are to this next chapter, the Gupta period and the post-Gupta period. The Gupta period and what happened after the Gupta period. Not pre-Gupta period. The Gupta period and the post-Gupta period. Let's start. By the end of the 3rd century CE, the powerful empire established by the Kushanas in the north and the Satavahanas in the Deccan, as we had just now read, had come to an end. It all finished. It was against this background that the Guptas emerged to dominate the history of India for the next 2 centuries. Gupta suddenly came up and they said, okay, now these have gone down, now we are going to rule this place. What are the sources? The information about the Gupta period is available from both archaeological and literary sources, written sources, and all digging up excavation. The most important archaeological source is the Allahabad pillar inscription. Temples, paintings and coins are some other archaeological sources. The main literary sources include the work of Kalidasa and the accounts of Fahin and Ising, travelers who came, their scriptures, what they wrote about this Gupta period. Political history. Chandragupta I, 320 to 335 CE. The first powerful ruler of the dynasty was Chandragupta I. He married Kumara Devi, a princess of the Lichavi tribe. His empire extended from Magadha, Bihar to Prayag, Allahabad. He adopted the title Maharaja Dhiraja, which means the king of kings. Raja ka Raja, king of kings. Maharaja Dhiraja. Finished. Chandragupta I done. Samudragupta 335 to 375. Please remember the dates. Write down in your copies. History is all about notes. When I am reading something, underline it. Then you write it down. Samudragupta. I am just not reading it for the sake of reading. Okay, don't take it cool. Samudragupta, son of Chandragupta I. Samudragupta is the son of Chandragupta. So 335 he left, 335 he took over. Was the greatest ruler of the dynasty. An inscription engraved on the pillar at Allahabad, popularly called the Allahabad pillar inscription or the Prayag Prahasti, is the main source of information on this reign. It lists the region conquered by the king. It also mentions the ancestors of the king. The Prahasti was composed by Samudragupta's court poet Harisena. Full details, fathers, grandfathers who were there, what are the areas he has conquered and all the list on that pillar. Information by the poet at Samudragupta's court was Harisena. Do you know what a Prahasti is? The word Prahasti comes from the Sanskrit and means in praise of, praising someone. Court poets often wrote accounts in which they listed the achievements of the king and praised him so that the king did not kill him or throw him out. They used to always, sometimes they used to exaggerate, write extra about the king. The king used to be happy. Then they engraved such accounts on pillars so that the people could read them. The pillar inscription of the Samudragupta is one such Prahasti. Given in the box below are few lines from it. They describe the kind-hearted nature of the king. Ask your teacher to explain it to you in simple words. Whose mind busied itself with the support and the initiation of the miserable, the poor and helpless and the afflicted. Who was the glorified personification of kindness to mankind. Whose officers were always employed in restoring the wealth of the various kings who had been conquered by the strength of his arms, whose many wonderful and noble deeds are worthy to be praised for a very long time. This shows, this writing, whose mind busied itself with the support and the initiation of the miserable and the poor. His mind was always for his people. He cared for the poor, he looked after them, looked after the helpless, those who were affected, who was glorified by personification of his great kindness to mankind. He had a great sense of humanity. This is what he's saying, he was a very kind person, he was full of humanity, and whose officers were always employed in restoring the wealth. They used to not expend or spend uselessly their wealth, and various kings who had been conquered by the strength of his arms. The wealths were kept properly guarded. He was a huge fighter, he was a great warrior, whose many wonderful and noble deeds, good man, he's done good things, are worthy to be praised. Prahasti has to be done for a very long time. It has to be praised for a very long time. We don't get people like this anymore. You can be one so that people will praise you. The Prayag Prahasti, what is there? What is so much there in the Prayag Prahasti? The Prayag Prahasti lists the rulers against whom Samudragupta fought. It also describes the policy that he followed towards each set of rulers. Those he conquered, how many people he conquered, how he used his policies, his techniques, his ideas, that's tell us. Okay. The Prahasti lists, yes, it also describes the policy that he followed towards each set of rulers. In the north, Samudragupta defeated 4 powerful kings and numerous small kings of his empire. These territories were administered directly by him. Samudragupta defeated 12 rulers of the Deccan and the far south Dakshinapatha. These kingdoms were not annexed. The rulers only had to pay an annual tribute and accept Samudragupta as their overlord. He did not take over. He said, you are there, you stay there, you will work under me, you will take care of it. Samudragupta defeated many kingdoms of the east such as Nepal, Assam and Bengal. The rulers had to accept his suzerainty and pay him tribute. Again, he did not take anything from there. He said, you have to pay me taxes, you have to give me everything, you will take care of it, you are under my staff. Samudragupta also defeated the forest tribes of the Vindhya region. The rulers offered tributes and gifts to the king. This was his system in the Prahasti. He did not kill anybody. He said, okay, you stay there, but this is my area. You have to now work for me. Now comes Chandragupta II. Chandragupta I's son is Samudragupta, and let's see who is Chandragupta II. 375 to 414. So if we go back to Samudragupta, we see that he was till 375. So 375, Chandragupta II was the son of Samudragupta. He was also known as Vikramaditya. He defeated the Shakas and took control of the ports of Broch, Cambay and Supara. He maintained friendly relations with the powers of the Deccan and the far south. Chandragupta II was a patron of arts and literature. The Navratnas or the 9 gems lived in his court. Vikramaditya's court, 9 gems, the Navratnas. Poet Kalidasa was one of them. Fahim came to India during Chandragupta's reign and has written about many other poets, philosophers and writers who lived in the court of the king. He has also written about the life of the common people. Fahim. Later Guptas. Chandragupta II, after that the later. After Chandragupta II, Kumaragupta and Skandagupta were powerful Gupta rulers. During the reign of Skandagupta, the empire was threatened by the Hunas, the nomadic tribesmen of Central Asia. They ended the rule of the dynasty. The Hunas came into action. So what happened after the Gupta period? After the end of the Gupta period, many kingdoms became powerful in both the north and the south. The kingdom of Harsha was dominant in the north. The Chalukyas ruled in the Deccan. The Pallavas were powerful in the south. Slowly it's breaking up. Harshavardhana 606 to 647. The breakup of the Gupta Empire was followed by a period of disorder. Small kingdoms fought against one another. Finally, Harshavardhana conquered these kingdoms and established a powerful empire. Sources. We learn about Harsha and the development during his reign from 2 main sources. One is Harsha Charitra, the biography of the king written in Sanskrit by his court poet Bannabhatta. The book lists the military and the cultural achievements of Harsha. The other is the account of Huinsang, another traveller who visited India during Harsha's reign. He spent 8 years in the court of Harsha. He has written in detail about the developments during these years. Beside these sources, inscriptions and coins of the period tell us about Harsha. So mostly all is about written facts which we have got. We were never there. No one has been there alive. There is no one alive. So all whatever we have found through history, archaeological sources, we come to know history. We come to know about the past. Your birth certificate will give about your past. Archaeological sources, literary sources, written sources. That was a joke. But it's true. Military campaigns. The capital of Harsha's empire was Kanauj. Harsha conquered Punjab, eastern Rajasthan and the whole of the Ganga Valley up to Assam. He attacked the Chalukyan king Pulakesan II but was defeated. Harsha did not annex all the territories that he conquered. He allowed some kings whom he defeated to continue ruling. They accepted Harsha as their overlord and paid him an annual tribute. They also gave him money and soldiers when he needed them. Harsha now as a patron of art. Harsha was a patron of art and learning. He was a good writer himself. He wrote 3 plays in Sanskrit: Ratnavali, Priyadarshika, and Nagananda. Scholars such as Banna Bhatta, Sabandhu, and Dandin lived in his court. In his early years, Harsha was a worshipper of Shiva but later became a Buddhist. He was tolerant of other religions. He organized a grand assembly at Kanauj in 641 CE and gave money to the University of Nalanda, Bihar. See the box. Nalanda is in Bihar. The university here was perhaps established in the 5th century by the Gupta rulers. The chief patron of the university was King Harshavardhana. The university was the first residential university in the world. Over 10,000 students and 2,000 teachers lived here. It was a university meant only for men. Students who wanted to join the university were interviewed by senior monks. Only when the monks were convinced that a particular student was serious and keen to learn more was he granted admission. The subjects taught included Buddhist philosophy, logic, grammar, medicine, and the Vedas. The library of the university was spread over 3 buildings. One of the 3 was called the Ratna Sagar, which means an ocean of gems. The university flourished between the 5th and the 12th century. It is still there, the Nalanda Bihar University. And see, we are doing Ratna Sagar book. It's name of a company, publisher's name is Gems of, an ocean of gems, knowledge. Now, how does the government patronize artists these days? They help them, they give funds, and does the government still give money to educational institutions? Yes, they give them institutions, they give them, government gives aid, to provide, to help you out in your, if you want to have a science library, if you want to have a chemistry library, if you want to have a practical room, if you want to have a laboratory, if you want to have a, library, the government helps, gives you sources and all. You have to show the project, what you want, what you need, and they help you out. Okay, so we'll keep it till here, and I'll meet you in the next class and we'll go ahead with it. Okay, so we'll go into Huin Sang's account. Today is the 21st. Yes, hope to see you soon. Take care, guys, be good, and happy pujas. Read till here and learn it.